Hi there. Today we're going to be talking about the project overview, which is an essential piece of documentation to maintain for software projects. We'll be going over the benefits of project overviews, what should be included in them, and at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a link where you can get access to a full project overview template document that we use at JH Media Group, and you can use it in your business, so make sure to stick around for that. So to go over the benefits, project overviews facilitate collaboration across different teams and stakeholders, helping to make sure that everybody clearly understands the project's scope and goals. It also substantially reduces onboarding time for new team members because it empowers them to do a pretty good amount of onboarding themselves. Then third, all the foundational information about a project is centralized in one place in this document, making it a whole lot easier to remember those items if a project is really long, or maybe if it's paused and then resumed later, it's much easier to hit the ground running. Then finally, given that it's really pretty easy to put together and maintain a project overview, it's giving you a lot of value for the time investment. So more bang for your buck. So let me go ahead and share my screen where I'm going to take you through the template that I mentioned earlier, as well as a completed example, so that we can go over what to include in your project overview in depth. So here in our overview, you can see that the first element is the project description, which encompasses a description of what is this project, what problems is it solving and for whom, and what does it do? And a lot of that information, can easily be broken out into the project goals. So what are the project goals for the user or users, if there's different types? And what is the project goal for the owners? And then how exactly does the system go about reaching those goals and or making money? So to see a good example, we created the data exchange system for TrueBlue Analytics. So the problem they were looking to solve is that for political campaigns that want to do grassroots fundraising efforts, it's really hard to do cold outreach, to individuals to gain their support. So wouldn't it be nice if there was a system that helped them to connect to people who were most likely to support their cause? So specific project goals for the users, we want to help campaigns by facilitating their access to relevant, high quality, non-duplicative donor information. For the owners, since they were already making these connections and helping campaigns in this way manually, the goal is to streamline and automate that process and save them a whole lot of time. So how does the system go about doing this? Well, it allows campaigns to query the large data set that TBA has on relevant criteria so that they can really hone in on the donors of most interest to them. It allows them to upload a hashed contact information list that they have so that they avoid purchasing duplicate records. And it also finally allows them to purchase records that are prioritized by the likelihood of that donor being active and responding via a particular communication channel. Then, as far as the administrative side goes, it allows administrators to keep the data set up to date, to add to it, to view all the transactions and keep their legal agreements up to date. Don't skimp on this piece. This is really going to help to clarify the vision of the project and keep everybody on the same page and avoid scope creep. So next part, system users. So for every type of user that's going to be interacting with the system, we'll describe who they are and what permissions do they have or not have. And this is going to be really helpful, particularly for developers, to be able to see at a glance what's going on. So for the TBA system, we have standard users, which are people who want to purchase political donor contact data. And I kind of already talked about what they can do. They can query the data set, they can do duplicate detection and purchase records. Then admins. So these are trusted people on the TBA team. They need to be able to keep the data set up to date, view all the transactions, when did they happen, how many records were purchased, etc., and keep their legal documents up to date, as well as see what legal documents applied to each of the transactions in the log. They need to be able to manage their users and create other admins. And then what we see time and time again on software projects is that they're both admins and super admins, because once an admin's created, who's going to be able to delete and edit that admin? You kind of need somebody one level above, and that is the super admin who can do that, as well as they can create other super admins. In a different type of B2B, for example, B2B SaaS system, you're likely to have multiple types of system users. You're likely to at least have team leaders and team members. So a team leader is somebody who signs up on the SaaS system on behalf of their company and then invites other people at the company to use the system on their company account. So those team members then have their own permissions, and a lot of times there's multiple types of team members that use the system. So just keep that in mind. Then we've got the project team. So who are the people doing the work? And we've got places to put their contact information. So for this team, it was pretty small. It's an internal team, so I didn't bother to put their information out there in this video. But this having the contact information there is really important, because you may be also working with third-party teams. Maybe the client has their own development team that's going to be doing part of the work. So you want to delineate, what's everybody's role? What are they responsible for? And how do we get in touch with them if we really need to? So what are multiple contact points for that person? Then we've got a place to describe, to put the information, basics about the client. So what's their company name and website, what's their mailing and billing address, and who are the stakeholders on their side? What is the role of each stakeholder on their side? And who's the lead decision maker if there is one person? If there's not, you might want to modify this a little to say what area of the work does each stakeholder have decision-making power over? Again, for TBA, I did not list their stakeholders and put their contact information out there, but you can easily see how to fill in the blanks here. Then we've got signed contracts. So for each signed contract that's associated with this project, what is the date it was signed? What's the description of it? And where's the link to it? So for this one, it was pretty simple. We have a contract for the initial system build, and we also had a contract for some design changes down the line and additional search parameters that were added. So you can see that signed contract with these links here. Also, in the administrative side, we've got billing milestones. Often projects are set up this way, where once certain aspects of the work are completed, then we can bill a certain amount. And ideally that is really specified in the contract. But to make it easier, we list them here so that the project manager can easily keep tabs on when have certain milestones been achieved, so that they can let billing know to go ahead and bill. So for those, we've got them described here. We've got project start, then we've got a milestone for kind of the boilerplate aspect. So can we get users onto the system? Can they change their profile? Can they authenticate? And can admins use the admin panel for user management? And then we have a final milestone for project completion. Then we've got the system information area. So this is great for keeping everything in one place. So for each environment that is associated with this project, for us, a lot of times it's staging versus production. Have a link to the login page there so that everybody knows what's involved, and people can get where they need to go, for example, to test out new changes that are on staging but not on live. Then we've got links to the code repos for a project. In this case, it's a link to one that's separate for front end and one that's separate for back end. Then we list out all the third-party systems that need to be integrated into the system to make it work. So what we see over and over again is, since we specialize in SaaS development, we have transactional email systems that are needed, as well as each system needs a payment processor, and we tend to use Mandrill and Stripe a lot of times. So this is really gonna depend on what your niche is. And finally, we have the icon pack that's used. So which icon pack is it and what plan do you have? And that way the designer can easily grab additional elements, and by knowing what plan you have, they know which ones we have access to and which we don't. Next, we've got a version history for the wireframes and designs for a project. So in this case, the initial design was not done by, well, it was done by us, but not specifically for this project. But we did go ahead and revise the design. And here we've got, the date that was done, the description, which was here we were improving the purchasing process flow, and a link to, in this case, the Figma file that was approved by the client. But, usually you're going to have like the initial wireframes, revisions on the wireframes after you've collaborated with the client, then, initial designs, revisions on them. So this is really going to be a nice place where you can see the evolution of the project plan. Then final section, we've got similarly a history of the information architecture. And so here we have a link to the initial build architecture, as well as a link to the scope of work that described some additions and changes that we made down the road. And again, this is really invaluable to see what decisions were made, what was added or changed or removed from the project, and when were those decisions made. And we'll talk later, in a separate video about decision logs, which goes into this in a lot more depth. So that's pretty much what you need to include. So now I'm going to talk about some tips for maintaining your project overview. For one, we need to be careful about access to sensitive information. So for example, contracts, you probably don't want everybody that's involved to be able to see those. So these links need to be to systems that are access controlled, so that only the people that should have access to the signed contracts have it. The same goes for billing information and system access details. Those all need to be secured and shared responsibly. Then a big tip that I alluded to earlier is that the earlier you create this project overview document, even if it's not complete, the better off you will be. And you want to keep it up to date. So have the project manager periodically review it and revise it and add to it. And you also want to make sure it's accessible to all team members and stakeholders, so that there's a single source of truth for everybody. Finally, we recommend integrating it with your project management tools. So I'll show you how we do this. So even though this template that I'm going to share access to is a Google Doc, so that you can easily take it and make it your own, we have our project overviews in Confluence. And the reason that's nice is because it integrates really nicely with Jira, which is our project management tool. And so, for example, on this sample made up, project overview here, I have a link to a Jira roadmap, so that not only do you get all the other elements I just described, but you can see at a glance what the planned timeline is for this project. You can also have areas where you list all the open issues in Jira, so that people can see it in a glance what's in progress, what's not, and a list of other updated documentation, so that people can see changes that have happened to other documents at a glance. So I'm going to go ahead and share access to the link to the project overview template that we use at JH. So there it is. Make sure to like and subscribe if this was helpful to you, because this is just the first in a series of project documentation pieces that we're going to go over in depth. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, make sure to reach out and let us know, and stay tuned for additional really essential project documentation that your life's going to be so much easier if you keep it up to date. Thanks a lot.